Hello and welcome to PocketGamer.biz's weekly news digest. This is for the week ending the 12th of June 2015. Hi, I'm Jon Jordan. So the big news this week was Oculus finally announcing some details of its Rift VR headset. This is clearly not an Oculus Rift headset. This is, or no one has an Oculus Rift consumer headset yet. It won't be out till next year, but there's a few kind of VR headsets knocking around. This is one. This is a Zeus One headset. You put your phone in this one. So this is kind of where we're at the moment in terms of the technology. What we're waiting for VR is to move beyond putting your mobile phone or your tablet into the head-mounted display, or using it as a head-mounted display. And Oculus is kind of the big Facebook owned now kind of hope that I'll put that down, don't drop it. The big hope kind of for VR, and it's kind of interesting because Oculus has been around now for over a year. Facebook and they bought it for $1 billion in last year. So this kind of stuff's been bubbling under. There've been various versions of what they've called developer kit, which have clearly been marked as not for consumer, but have kind of given an idea about how the kind of software and hardware would work. But in a pre-E3 press conference, they kind of finally did their big reveal, and the reveal wasn't so much in terms of the hardware, the stuff you put on your head, because that there's a slight, there's been some aesthetic changes on that, and there's some removable headphones that go on that. It looks quite nice. But the most interesting thing was really the controller. So we've known that you're going to have this thing on your head, you're going to look around, and there's a little camera that you put on your desk that tracks your head movement. Bit clunky, but that's the only way people seem to be doing it at the moment. But the really interesting thing that people were waiting for was kind of what you can do with your hands. So at the moment with the headset I was using and with the kind of Google Cardboard, those kind of concepts, there's not really been any direct control. So for some of them, for that Zeus one, you have to actually buy a Bluetooth button effectively, so you can do like a double tap or a tap to kind of action stuff in the game, or obviously you can look at stuff, and that's how a lot of people have been kind of creating their experiences, but obviously that's pretty limiting. So with Oculus, they've come up with this kind of neat idea. It's called Oculus Touch, and you get two of them. So you have one in each hand, and basically it's a joystick in each hand, and you have they have two kind of trigger buttons and actually two face buttons on top. They're not really used, but basically you have like you would with the game's Joy controller now, joypad really, you have kind of dual sticks and triggers, and also they have a kind of like a circle band going around them that has LEDs on that's also tracked by the camera, so the camera can basically track your head and your hand movements, obviously as long as you're facing the camera, so that again a limitation. And I guess the other interesting thing, more strategic, was Oculus have announced a pretty strategic deal with Microsoft. So Windows 10 will support Oculus Rift, and also Xbox One games. They're not gone into detail really about how they'll be supported, but they will be, and each Oculus Rift will come with an Xbox One controller, so again a standard games controller. It will provide different options, I suppose, if you wanted to have a kind of more traditional games experience where just you're using the headset as a kind of VR display, but you're doing a more traditional kind of game control. So a few games being shown as well, some kind of nice stuff, but again, the whole problem with this Oculus at the moment, and the whole problem with VR at the moment, is the stuff that's out there is very primitive and not very well supported by developers, because the standardization is not really happening yet, even though actually Google announced they've had 1 million of their cardboard units sold, but those are very cheap $20 kind of bottom of the line VR. People don't consider those proper VR. When it's proper VR, we're talking about Oculus, and we're talking about Morpheus from Sony, and we're talking about Valve and HTC working on their VR, and a few other those kind of more, probably $1,000 kind of headsets. That's the problem. No one knows pricing yet. Even with Oculus, they kind of announced there's going to be pre-orders in the fall. We still don't know. There's a lot of kind of detail, and that's kind of really for consumer hardware. That's really what consumer hardware kind of lives and dies on. How much it's going to cost, when it's going to come out, and what software it's going to be supporting. So it's always kind of nice to get an idea about what it's going to be, but we're still almost a year away from seeing this stuff come out. So lots to talk about, lots of speculation still, and I guess lots of disruption that can happen. And even kind of further away, maybe from the VR stuff, is the augmented reality. So there's also a big debate in the camps between VR and AR about which one's going to win out. And some of the analysts think augmented reality is going to be the big thing, because that's you're kind of adding things into reality. So that's more of a Google Glass type scenario. So you're looking at reality and having virtual objects put into it, or messaging or data put into it, rather than being in a completely virtual world where effectively you're wearing something directly over your head and you can't see anything else, which is clearly seen as a bit geeky. But there's big arguments about which is going to be the most important. Obviously Facebook has made a fairly big play for Oculus. Google, it looks like he's making more of an augmented reality play. Microsoft has its HoloLens, again looks amazing, but not much detail about that. And of course, Apple being Apple, who knows what they're cooking up, and who knows if they'll ever tell us what's going on. So that was kind of the big kind of pre-E3 news. Obviously, E3 is the big game show in in Los Angeles, which will be happening next week. Always more of a traditional show than a mobile show, but our news editor Alicia will be out there checking out what's going on with the mobile companies who are showing stuff, or talking behind closed doors, or maybe kind of showing games that are going to come out in the future. Pocket Gamer will be there. We're having our events there, and a good time to also point out that Pocket Gamer has its Connect conferences. So we've had very successful ones in London and Helsinki and Bangalore in India a couple of months ago now, and we're kind of really gearing up for our San Francisco show, which is our first Connect's big kind of 2-day conference that we've held in North America. So that's happening at the start of July, 7th and 8th of July. You want to be checking that out. There's some pretty good deals kind of going on for indie developers who want to come along to our big indie pitch, and also for developers who want to come along to the conference stream. And there's lots of kind of cool speakers and kind of parties and networking. And you know, if you're in the San Francisco area, you definitely want to be checking that out. So what else has been happening in the news this week? So occasionally in news circles, you have these kind of weird little kind of, I guess, trends where each story isn't particularly big in and of itself, but they kind of like all happen at the same time. And I guess this week that trending thing has been Angry Birds. So we all know about Rovio, been massive success over the last couple of years, and then struggled a little bit with free-to-play business. And now I've actually been quite bullish. We had them kind of heavily featured in our top 50 developers of the year at the start of the year, because I've kind of thought Rovio has a massive brand in Angry Birds, and it's kind of restarted a little bit, and it's kind of coming up with some new ideas about how they want to approach Angry Birds kind of for the new generation of mobile gaming. And so partly we're seeing that a little bit. We've had a few new Angry Birds games coming out over the last year. The latest one's come out, Angry Birds Fight. So that's come out this week. It's interesting to see now. I think Angry Birds, those games they came out very irregularly and they were big events. Now it's become much more of a kind of a service thing. There's lots of Angry Birds games coming out. They're using different brands. So you have Angry Birds Stella, which is more female focused kind of thing, and they're just putting out a lot of games now, all of very high quality, and it's all kind of feeding into the big brand that they have. Equally as part of that brand, and something they actually announced a long time ago, they got an Angry Birds film coming out. That's going to be pretty interesting next year to see how that works. And on the back of that, also another big kind of paid game at the time that company's been kind of playing around with free to play is a Cut the Rope. So kind of very similar in the sense that both of them originally were published by Chinlingo, and now the Cut the Rope guys have announced they've got an animated film as well coming out also next year, and that's using the Om Nom character. So that's kind of, again, interesting to see. It's not as big a brand as Angry Birds, we would probably say, but it has a much stronger single character, Om Nom, whereas Angry Birds, obviously, there are a few different Angry Birds. I guess Red's the most famous, but they're more of a kind of collective group, I suppose. Also in the Angry Birds situations, a few kind of other branding things going on. So Angry Birds announced Angry Birds Lego. There will be Angry Birds Lego physical Angry Birds Lego construction kits. They will be coming out, I think this year, 2015. More details to be announced on that. And the other interesting thing, and I've always been surprised that there's not been more of this kind of mashup type stuff. There's been odds and ends over the years, but Sonic Dash was announced that Sega announced that Sonic Dash had done 100 million downloads. It's been out for about 2 years, so it's not a massive figure, but still pretty impressive. That's that game on iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and Amazon actually. That's done 100 million downloads lifetime over those platforms, and as kind of part of their special kind of celebration, they've announced this kind of 3-week event that sees the Angry Birds appearing, or 3 of the Angry Birds appearing in Sonic Dash. And if you collect enough of the tokens when you're playing the game, you can unlock those characters to play, or of course you can just kind of spend some of your hard-earned money and actually unlock them straight away. But they're limited editions, you only get them for the next 3 weeks in Sonic Dash. And that's kind of interesting, because that's playing into our whole thing about branding again. I think what we've seen over the last certainly year is that brands are becoming much more important. So games that have become brands are branching out from games. and Rovio and Angry Birds being the obvious example, and also kind of brands outside of games coming into games and gaining audience share. So I'm sure those are trends that will be continuing, and trends we'll be talking about at San Francisco in our conference as well. Hope to see you there. Otherwise, see you next week when we catch up on more news.